When Mu Chen's eyes closed once again, everyone was momentarily startled. Even Shan Zongxing and Li Xuantong's eyes tightened, their gaze fixed on him. It seemed that Mu Chen had not exhausted his tricks just yet. Did he still have hidden methods? At this point, it was clear that Mu Chen wouldn't continue setting up spirit arrays, as that would take too long, and ancient heavenly flame wouldn't give him another chance. So, he had to employ other methods. But what method could allow him to truly counter the early-stage heaven-reaching power of ancient heavenly flame? No one knew, so all eyes were locked onto Mu Chen in the sky. Ancient heavenly flame slightly furrowed his brows, but didn't think Mu Chen was just posturing. After experiencing the 2 5th-rank spirit arrays earlier, he no longer viewed Mu Chen as an ordinary freshman. However, he was a little curious about what other method Mu Chen could use to counter him. After all, ordinary tactics could never allow someone in the early heaven transformation stage to challenge an opponent at the early heaven reaching stage. In the sky, Mu Chen, with his eyes tightly shut, didn't keep everyone waiting for long. A faint flicker of lightning began to appear on his body, and his skin slowly turned silver. The sound of thunder spread quietly. Is that the thunder god body? Chen Zongxing and Li Xuantong's eyes flickered, disappointment and doubt flashing in their hearts. They had trained in the thunder god body themselves. While it did enhance combat power significantly, it was still far from enough to close the gap between Mu Chen and ancient heavenly flame. If Mu Chen hoped to counter ancient heavenly flame with this, the result was already clear. In the sky, Mu Chen slowly opened his eyes. Lightning flickered in his black pupils, arcs of lightning jumping around his body. There was an explosive force emanating from him. His power has increased. Ancient heavenly flame narrowed his eyes, disappointment flashing in his gaze as well. It wasn't nearly enough. This feeling wasn't just shared by them. Even the participants around Lingguang Mountain furrowed their brows, worry in their eyes. While Mu Chen's aura had become stronger, it was still nowhere near comparable to ancient heavenly flame. However, Mu Chen didn't pay much attention to the countless gazes. His eyes were locked solely on ancient heavenly flame. In the next moment, he stepped forward, his body like a streak of lightning, shooting straight toward him. Ancient heavenly flame remained motionless, watching Mu Chen approach like a lightning bolt. He shook his head lightly. Was Mu Chen planning to throw caution to the wind and charge at him like this? He sighed and smiled helplessly. Then, with a flick of his palm, crimson spiritual power erupted like flames, releasing a massive wave of energy. Whoosh! Mu Chen's speed was incredibly fast. In just a few breaths, he appeared before ancient heavenly flame. Without hesitation, he threw a punch. Spiritual power burning with black flames surged out, creating a powerful shockwave that even split the ground beneath them. The violent wind from his punch caused ancient heavenly flame's hair to flutter, but he merely shook his head. His fingers clenched into a fist, and he also struck out. Sigh. Everyone watching sighed inwardly as the 2 fists were about to collide. Some even turned their heads slightly. In a direct clash like this, Mu Chen had no chance of winning. Wang Tong and the others could only laugh bitterly, shaking their heads in resignation. Su Linger's face turned pale, but beside her, Luo Li's eyes remained clear and focused on Mu Chen. She knew him too well. No matter how difficult the situation, he would never do something meaningless. Under the countless unblinking gazes, Mu Chen and ancient heavenly flame's fists were about to meet. Yet, in that moment, Mu Chen's other hand quietly formed a strange seal. Buzz. As Mu Chen completed the seal, a thunderous sound echoed from within his body. A black, uneven thunder pearl in his meridian suddenly exploded. Boom. At the moment the black thunder pearl exploded, an indescribable terrifying force surged out like a flood, with black thunder paste rushing through his meridians, moving frantically. Excruciating pain spread throughout Mu Chen's body, causing blood vessels to appear in his eyes. But he gritted his teeth and endured, quickly activating the thunder god body, desperately absorbing the terrifying thunder power. At that very moment, Mu Chen and Gu Tianyan's fists collided with a forceful crash. Black lightning surged out from every pore on Mu Chen's body, faint traces of blood mist mixed within. Boom! A deafening sound that seemed to shake the heavens and earth echoed across the land. The towering peak, like a pillar holding up the sky, trembled violently, and everyone saw the ground beneath begin to crack, with massive rifts resembling black serpents slithering and twisting through the earth. Layers of rock shot up from the source, and as they exploded into the air, they quickly disintegrated into dust with a loud bang. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at the area where the rocks were launching from. The overwhelming, violent spiritual energy light made it impossible to see what was actually happening within. Shen Songxing, Li Xiantong, Lin Zhang, and Zhou Qingshan all focused their gazes intently on the spot. At that very moment, their pupils contracted sharply as a thunderous roar rang out. Then, everyone witnessed a shadow shoot out from the blinding light. The figure skidded along the ground, its feet digging 2 feet deep into the hard rock, leaving 2 glaringly long scratches hundreds of yards long, with scorched black edges at the rock's edges. Who could that be? All eyes were immediately drawn to the figure. The shadow, though somewhat unsteady, finally stabilized, and as the light faded, a head of bright red hair became visible. It was Gu Tianyan. Countless pairs of eyes widened in shock, even their breaths seemingly halted. A sense of utter disbelief spread across their faces. How is this possible? Whether it was on Lingguang Mountain or at Baiming Plaza, everyone muttered in disbelief. The person who had been thrown out in such a sorry state was actually Gu Tianyan. On the elder platform, the watching elders also wore solemn expressions. What's going on? Shen Songxing, Li Xiantong, Lin Zhang, and Zhou Qingshan stared at the unbelievable scene before them, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. Even they, for a moment, were stunned. Previously, Mu Chun had set up 2 5th-grade spirit arrays, yet he hadn't been able to force Gu Tianyan into such a desperate state. How could this head-on clash, which seemed so hopeless, result in such an outcome? Amidst the gasps of astonishment, Gu Tianyan slowly raised his head. A noticeable streak of blood was at the corner of his mouth, and his gaze, too, was filled with shock as he looked towards the center of the giant peak, where violent spiritual energy still enveloped the area. You're really impressive. I didn't expect you to still have a trick up your sleeve stronger than those 2 5th-grade spirit arrays. Gu Tianyan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his voice hoarse and low, no longer carrying the same ease as before. In the center of the area, within the violent spiritual energy light, it seemed like footsteps were approaching. All eyes were fixed on the spot. Boom, boom. The footsteps grew louder, and within the glowing spiritual energy, a figure slowly became clearer. Soon, the figure stepped out of the radiant light, appearing clearly within everyone's view. Hiss. When the figure finally emerged, everyone collectively gasped in shock. Mu Chun had changed drastically. His body was marked with cracked patterns, black thunder paste constantly seeping out from every pore, enveloping him. Black lightning arcs danced across his body, and his once normal black eyes were now filled with a terrifying, uncontrollable rage, almost as if the very essence of destruction itself emanated from him. If the previous Mu Chun had given off a sense of calm and composure, now he was like a being of destruction straight from the depths of darkness, sending chills down everyone's spine. What is that? Everyone stared in disbelief at Mu Chen's transformed state. Was such a destructive force really something a person at the early heaven transformation stage could wield? Is that the thunder god body? Shen Songxing and Li Xiantong were filled with astonishment. From Mu Chen's energy, they sensed a familiar wave, one that resembled the thunder god body, but it was far stronger than any thunder god body they had encountered. At Baiming Plaza, countless people were stunned. The elders on the elder platform also wore grave expressions. Such a fluctuation. Grand Song's deep-set eyes narrowed slightly as he murmured, "That's the power of black divine thunder. This kid even hides black divine thunder within him. Really reckless." An elderly man with white hair shook his head and said, "I don't know where he got that black divine thunder from, but even a person at the supreme stage wouldn't dare to easily handle it." Everyone could only see the black thunder paste and crimson spiritual energy rampaging wildly. The 2 figures collided fiercely, their fists clashing, and the surrounding ground was immediately torn apart with deep craters. Countless onlookers were left speechless, staring at the two figures hidden beneath the raging spiritual energy, their intense hand-to-hand combat making everyone's heart race. Who could have expected that this battle would become so brutal? Bang! Amidst the countless astonished gazes, within the turbulent spiritual energy, the two individuals, their eyes glowing crimson, slammed their fists together once again. A visible shockwave spread out, and the land instantly cracked open. Boom! In Mu Chen's eyes, it seemed as though a destructive black thunderbolt flashed. The black thunder paste on his arm squirmed, and the force of destruction burst forth in an instant. Bang! Mu Chen's fist, covered in black thunder paste, once again collided head-on with the fist of Gu Tianyan, which was encased in a crimson crystal layer. The black ripple spread out, and Gu Tianyan's face immediately changed. He saw cracks forming on the crimson crystal layer on his fist. The destructive waves contained in the black thunder paste seeped in, and the spiritual energy within him rapidly disintegrated upon contact with the destructive force. Retreat! A hoarse roar suddenly echoed from Mu Chen's throat. The black ripples trembled fiercely, and the crystal layer on Gu Tianyan's arm shattered piece by piece. His body was sent flying back over 1,000 meters by a single punch. As Gu Tianyan was sent flying, Mu Chen's feet sank deeply into the hard rocky ground due to the recoil force, almost up to his waist. Mu Chen sent Gu Tianyan flying again. A wave of shock and excitement spread through the surrounding Lingguang Mountain. Countless students looked on with fiery eyes, astonished at how terrifying Mu Chen was, managing to push Gu Tianyan back in this direct battle. In the boiling atmosphere, Mu Chen pressed his hands against the ground, lifting his body out of the earth, black thunder paste dripping down bit by bit. He raised his head and looked at the Gu Tianyan who had been blasted into the sky. The latter no longer held the composure he had at the beginning. Blood dripped steadily from his arms, his clothes torn, and even his fiery red hair had become messy and scorched. The power unleashed by the Black God Thunder Pearl far exceeded Mu Chen's expectations. The force was terrifying, and even though he cultivated the Thunder God body, his body still suffered severe injuries. Had he not trained his Thunder God body, capable of absorbing thunder power to temper his physique, he likely would have been reduced to ashes by the Black God Thunder. However, even with this, he couldn't maintain this state for long. His body couldn't withstand the raging Black God Thunder forever. I must end this quickly. The intense pain in his body kept Mu Chen calm. He didn't let the advantage go to his head. His eyes flashed, and he decided not to drag this out any longer. Boom! Just as this thought crossed Mu Chen's mind, a violent spiritual energy fluctuation erupted from the distant sky, shooting up into the heavens. He looked up and saw the horizon ablaze, as if flames were burning across the sky. And beneath that fiery sky, Gu Tianyan stood suspended, his eyes burning crimson, as though flames were bursting from them. He stared intently at Mu Chen, his hoarse voice echoing across the sky. Mu Chen, you're the first person to force me to this point with your heaven transformation realm strength. I admire your ability. If you can withstand this move, even if you lose, I'll admit you're the victor. With his words, there was no hesitation. Gu Tianyan swiftly formed hand seals, and as his gestures changed, the crimson spiritual energy that had filled the sky began to gather rapidly toward his hands. Boom! Boom! The crimson spiritual energy condensed furiously, and eventually, it formed a crimson long halberd, about several dozen meters long, in Gu Tianyan's hands. The halberd was like an inflamed dragon coiled around it, its shape fierce, entirely crimson, as if forged from fiery red crystals. The dragon slowly writhed, releasing an indescribable, violent aura that spread out. Roar! He's even using this move. Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan's eyes narrowed. They knew Gu Tianyan well, and they also understood that this move was likely his strongest offensive technique. At the beginning, who could have predicted that the seemingly certain Gu Tianyan would be forced into such a situation? Xin Songxing and Li Xintong also looked up, and it was clear to everyone that after this long battle, both sides had exhausted all their means. No matter the outcome, even if Mu Chen lost, no one would question him. It's all up to this final move. In the sky, as the great heaven flame dragon halberd took form, Gu Tianyan's face turned slightly pale. His red eyes locked onto Mu Chen as he took a sudden step forward. His arm trembled, and the halberd erupted with a blinding red light. Great heaven flame dragon halberd. Roar. Amidst the vast sea of flames, the sound of a dragon's roar echoed. The firestorm surged as the great heaven flame dragon halberd turned into a red streak of light, streaking across the sky towards Mu Chen. Within the red light, the flame dragon's claws slashed the air, its roar shaking the heavens. Mu Chen raised his head. The intense heat from the wind shattered the ground beneath him. In his black eyes, black thunder surged, growing more ferocious by the moment. He pressed his palms together, black thunder paste flowing in his hands. Then, with a sudden motion, he formed a seal. Behind him, spiritual energy surged like a starry sky. Within that sky, waves of spiritual power swept forward, and at that moment, a tiger and a turtle appeared, stepping through the stars. Roar. Moo. They both let out a deafening roar, and in the next instant, they shot forward, their bodies wrapped in black lightning. A dragon, a tiger, and a turtle. They tore through the sky, and in the breath of countless stunned eyes, they collided with a mighty crash. The sky darkened. Around Spirit Light Mountain, everyone's gaze was fixed on the giant peak. There, two terrifying forces streaked through the air, crashing like two comets across the sky. In the blink of an eye, they collided in a thunderous explosion. That moment, the deafening sound seemed to echo throughout the entire hunting ground. The blinding light that erupted was like a blazing sun, its intense rays cutting through the darkness. The sheer brightness forced countless people to squint. Boom! The blazing sun appeared out of nowhere as the dragon, tiger, and turtle released their most potent power, resulting in a spiritual energy storm several thousand feet wide. The space itself seemed to distort from the sheer force. Everyone watched, transfixed, as the storm grew increasingly violent, the spiritual energy twisting, showing signs of instability, an ominous sign that no one could ignore. Screech. The storm reached its limit. Before anyone could react, the entire storm exploded, sending spiritual energy ripples across the sky. It was a spectacular sight. At the very front of the storm, Mu Chen and Gu Tianyan were hit head-on. Although both tried to defend, the impact sent them flying. Boom, boom. The two were sent crashing through several mountains as they flew backward, their bodies tearing through rock and earth. Bang! They finally slammed into a mountain, and the rocks collapsed, burying them under tons of debris. Meanwhile, those near the peak were caught in the shockwave, thrown off their feet, with some even spewing blood from the impact. Thankfully, the explosion was merely the aftershock, and it didn't cause widespread destruction. Minutes later, the spiritual energy storm slowly subsided. The chaotic onlookers regained their focus and turned their eyes back to the towering peak. They couldn't help but twitch their mouths in surprise. The once majestic peak was now ravaged, massive cracks spread across it like a spider's web. The collision between the two had nearly destroyed the mountain. Many were shocked by the sheer destructive power of the two combatants. What about them? Someone suddenly remembered the two main figures and quickly shifted their gaze to the two collapsed mountains. The students involved in the hunting war were now even more nervous. Mu Chen's victory or defeat would determine whether they would receive the Spirit Light baptism. As long as Mu Chen manages to secure a draw here, their side of the students would practically have the victory in the bag for the final battle. But if Mu Chen loses, they would be down by 1 in the 3 matches, and turning the tide after that would be extremely difficult. After all, Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan, who have yet to make their move, are no pushovers. At this moment, Shun Songxing and Li Xuantong's expressions grew a bit more serious. Their gazes fixed on the two collapsing mountain peaks. Even with their composure, they couldn't help but feel their heartbeats quicken. Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan remained relatively calm, but the intense focus in their eyes still revealed their keen interest in the outcome. The world fell silent once again. The atmosphere was so oppressive it felt like it was hard to breathe. The same tense atmosphere blanketed Baiming Plaza. Everyone's eyes were glued to the massive light screen in the sky, their hands clenched tightly. The earlier battle had certainly been stunning, but in the end, the result was what mattered most. Crash! Under the watchful eyes of countless onlookers, the mountain peak that had collapsed earlier suddenly had rocks tumbling down in layers. All eyes rushed toward it. There, a burst of crimson spiritual light shot into the sky, and then, a figure emerged from the ruins of the collapsed mountain. "It's Gu Tianyan," someone exclaimed. The crimson light slowly dispersed, revealing Gu Tianyan's figure. His body was covered in blood, his face unusually pale. The fluctuations of his spiritual energy seemed sluggish, lacking the confident strength he had at the start. Clearly, the previous battle had not been easy for Gu Tianyan either. When the students saw Gu Tianyan reappear, their hearts sank. Though he had been heavily wounded, it was clear he was not yet to the point where he couldn't continue fighting. And Mu Chen, they looked toward the still silent mountain peak, their palms sweaty. This silence lasted for a while. Tap. From the collapsed mountain, rocks continued to roll down. Everyone widened their eyes, watching as the rocks began to slide off in layers. A faint black spiritual energy emerged, and from within, a stumbling figure staggered into the air before pausing mid-flight. It was Mu Chen, but at this moment, he was covered in blood, his body marked by horrifying scars. Compared to Gu Tianyan, he appeared far more battered and miserable. Yet, even in such a state, he stood tall in the sky, his figure tall and lean. His torn clothes fluttered in the wind. Though his appearance was pitiful, it couldn't hide the sharp, intimidating aura emanating from him. His eyes, slightly dimmed from his injuries, were fixed tightly on Gu Tianyan, burning with a fierce intensity. Countless gazes stared at the bloodied youth still standing in the sky. The silence lasted for a long time, but then it was shattered by an overwhelming cheer. Mu Chen had withstood Gu Tianyan's strongest attack. He had not been knocked down. The students' faces flushed with excitement, their arms waving as they gazed up at the slender figure in the sky. Their eyes were filled with reverence, a look no different from how they regarded Shen Zongxing and Li Xiantong. So amazing! The Wang Tong brothers' faces also flushed with excitement. Their eyes were full of admiration. Mu Chen's performance had completely won them over. Of course, they understood that many of the students from Baiming Spiritual Academy must have been conquered by Mu Chen as well. After today, Mu Chen's status at Baiming Spiritual Academy would likely rival that of Shen Zongxing and Li Xiantong. Even Su Xian, He Yao, and other influential figures would be far behind Mu Chen. At this moment, Su Linger cheered as well, her face flushed red. She excitedly grasped Su Xian's wrist. She had been so tense before, almost suffocating, and if they had lost at the last moment, it would have been unbearable. Su Xian nodded lightly, her eyes on Mu Chen's figure. She smiled faintly. Who would have thought that just a few months ago, this freshman had been an unknown at Baiming Spiritual Academy? But now, Luoli did not share the same excitement as the others. She simply watched Mu Chen quietly, her rosy lips curving into a subtle arc. She had always believed that the boy she liked would eventually shine, whether in the past, now, or in the future. Who? Shen Zongxing and Li Xiantong also quietly let out a breath of relief at this moment. They looked at Mu Chen's figure and couldn't help but nod. This guy was truly impressive. In the sky, Gu Tianyan gazed at the battered yet bright-eyed young man with a complicated expression. Listening to the deafening cheers around him, he couldn't help but chuckle bitterly. Back when he had been a student, many had once cheered for him in the same way. But now, it seemed the roles had reversed. Senior Gu, was the battle satisfying? If not, I might still be able to accompany you for another round. In the distance, Mu Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and, with some difficulty, lifted a faint smile. Hearing this, Gu Tianyan let out a laugh, his tense body finally relaxing. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it. If we continue now, I fear the crowd will turn against me. Besides, I already said, if you could withstand my attack, the victory would be yours." Pausing for a moment, Gu Tianyan's expression turned serious. He looked straight at Mu Chen, clasped his fists, and his deep voice spread through the sky. In this battle, I lost. With this declaration, he acknowledged Mu Chen as an equal, no longer viewing him as just a freshman at the early heaven transformation stage. Senior Gu, I appreciate your concession. Mu Chen did not feign humility. He simply nodded lightly. This battle was something he had fought for with everything he had. It was well earned. As their voices fell, the surrounding cheers erupted once more, shaking the heavens. Countless faces flushed with excitement. Mu Chen won. Mu Chen won. Waves of ecstatic shouts rang out, and even in Baiming Plaza, where students who had not participated in the hunting war gathered, excitement ran high. This battle alone was enough to stir their blood. On the elder platform, the gathered elders nodded slightly, evidently satisfied with the outcome. Headmaster, it seems our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy has gained another monstrous talent. This is indeed worth celebrating. Beside the Grand Song Academy headmaster, a white-haired elder remarked with a smile. The Grand Song Academy headmaster also smiled faintly. He gazed at the young man within the light screen and said slowly, "The Sacred Spirit Academy went to great lengths, resorting to underhanded means just to acquire Ji Xian. But I must let them know, our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's Mu Chen is no weaker than Ji Xian." Amid the overwhelming cheers, atop a towering peak, Shun Songxing and Li Xintong burst into laughter before turning toward Lin Zheng and Zhou Qingshan, whose expressions were somewhat complex. "Gentlemen, it seems the next battle falls on us." On the two towering peaks, Shun Songxing and Li Xintong both looked at Lin Zheng and Zhou Qingshan. Compared to before, they appeared much more at ease, confidence radiating from them. Lin Zheng and Zhou Qingshan were certainly not easy opponents, and even Shun Songxing and Li Xintong couldn't guarantee absolute victory. However, securing a draw wouldn't be difficult. With Mu Chen securing one victory out of 3 matches, even if they drew one and lost one, their team would still win overall. Of course, losing a match was out of the question. Mu Chen had fought so fiercely to claim this victory. If either of them lost, it would be difficult to justify. Lin Zheng and Zhou Qingshan exchanged glances and smiled wryly. They had not expected the situation to unfold like this. Around Lingguang Mountain, the cheers that had lasted for so long finally began to subside. Yet the crowd's eyes burned with excitement as they turned to the standoff on the 2 remaining peaks. With Mu Chen securing a win, their victory was already half assured. As long as Shun Songxing and Li Xintong didn't underperform, victory was theirs. Mu Chen watched the unfolding scene and finally allowed himself to fully relax. The next battles had nothing to do with him anymore. He had already done everything he could. A delicate fragrance wafted from behind, and Luo Li appeared beside Mu Chen. She didn't mind the bloodstains all over his body. Her delicate, fair hands supported his body, allowing him to lean against her soft figure. Luo Li helped Mu Chen up, her gaze lingering on the horrific wounds across his body, which had been caused by the power of black divine thunder. It was unimaginable how much pain Mu Chen had endured to withstand such force. "Are you all right?" Luo Li asked softly, a flash of concern crossing her clear eyes. Though it pained her to see Mu Chen fighting so desperately, she wanted to help him. She knew she couldn't interfere in such matters. It wasn't about his so-called pride. It was about responsibility. This was a responsibility Mu Chen had taken on himself, and it was for him alone to bear. Likewise, he wouldn't want anyone to intervene, even her. Mu Chen smiled weakly, stretching out his arm to wrap around Luo Li's slender waist. His body seemed to collapse against her soft, delicate form. His body trembled faintly, the result of the excruciating pain inside him. However, the tremors were so subtle that no one else could notice. Only Luo Li, holding him close, could feel it, and it made her heart ache even more. "From here on out, it's no longer my concern." Mu Chen gazed at the 2 towering peaks in the distance. He couldn't intervene in the final battle. "You've already completed the most important step. This battle shouldn't have too many uncertainties left," Luo Li said with a gentle smile. "Congratulations. You'll become the true top figure at Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy from now on." "I don't care about that." Mu Chen stared at Luo Li's exquisite, beautiful face, Speaking slowly, you came to Northern Heaven's Spiritual Academy for me, losing precious time on your cultivation. Though there's not much I can do about it, at least, I'll try my best to lessen the toll on you. I don't care if others get the spirit light baptism, but you cannot go without it. Luoli was momentarily stunned. She stared at the young man's face, which, despite the bloodstains, still seemed remarkably handsome. A touch of bitterness surged in her heart. Was this why you fought so hard? I haven't lost anything. In fact, the happiest times I've had were spent at Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Luoli said softly, a gentle smile playing on her cheek. Mu Chun smiled too, his arm tightening around the girl as if to melt into her body. While Mu Chun savored this tender moment, on the two towering peaks, Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong, under the gaze of countless eyes, took a slow step forward. Boom! A massive surge of spiritual energy shot into the sky, the overwhelming aura of power spreading across the land, enveloping the entire region. Clearly, Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong were preparing to go all out. Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan, facing the overwhelming pressure of spiritual energy, remained calm. Senior Lin Zhang, Senior Zhou Qingshan, Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong clasped their fists in salute, their voices ringing out, "Please, teach us." Bang! As soon as their voices fell, the two's eyes sharpened almost instantly. Their feet stomped on the ground, and their figures shot forward like a storm, gathering spiritual energy from all directions. Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan exchanged a look from a distance. With a resigned shrug, they both moved at once, to everyone's surprise, retreating rapidly. Were they retreating from Shun Songxing and Li Xuantong's attack? Whoosh! The entire area was filled with astonished murmurs. Though Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong were strong, it was obvious they could not intimidate Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan. The two paused, confused by the unexpected retreat, frowning as they looked at the two seniors, who showed no sign of combat readiness. What's going on? Shun Songxing muttered, his brow furrowing. To the many curious stares, Lin Zhang smiled wryly. No need to fight anymore. This final test, you've passed it, Zhou Qingshan shrugged and added with a smile. Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong froze, and the students around Lingguang Mountain were stunned. After a moment, they erupted into an earth-shattering cheer. Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan had surrendered voluntarily. That meant they had passed the final test, and everyone would receive the spirit light baptism. Have they given up? Mu Chun was also somewhat surprised, but it wasn't entirely unexpected. Lin Zhang and Zhou Qingshan were indeed powerful, but Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong were no weaker than them. Even if they fully committed, it would likely only result in a draw. But such a result wouldn't change the overall outcome. In the 3 rounds, Mu Chun had won 1, while Shun Songxing and the others had drawn 2, so the result was already decided. Since it couldn't be changed, there was no need to continue fighting in vain. However, Mu Chun was still a little surprised by how decisive Lin Zhang and the others were. He had originally thought they would at least engage for a while before choosing to end the battle. He never expected the fight to end before it even started. Shun Songxing and Li Xiantong clearly had similar thoughts, and they couldn't help but twitch their mouths slightly. The feeling of being on the edge, yet having to pull back, was incredibly frustrating. They had wanted to have a good, fierce fight, but Lin Zhang and the others didn't give them that chance. Is it over like this? Shun Songxing restrained his vast spiritual energy and said. Lin Zhang smiled and nodded. He flicked his fingers, and a surge of spiritual energy shot into the sky before exploding in a burst. The space around them slightly distorted, and 2 elderly figures slowly emerged. As soon as the 2 elders appeared, their hoarse voices rang out. Since Lin Zhang and the others have given up, this final battle ends with the student side victory. According to the rules, all students are eligible for the spirit light baptism. Upon hearing the elders' final judgment, countless students cheered excitedly. Once the cheers subsided, the 2 elders turned their gaze to Mu Chun, Shun Songxing, and Li Xiantong. You 3 participated in the final battle and won, so you should be rewarded. One of the elders waved his sleeve, and 3 brilliant streaks of light shot toward the 3 of them. The lights transformed into 3 halos before them, and within the halos, 3 spirit crystals about 10 feet in size appeared. The spirit crystals were translucent, and within them, a liquid seemed to flow slowly, emitting an extremely powerful and pure spiritual energy fluctuation. These were Spirit King-level spirit crystals, and judging by their immense spiritual energy, they were clearly stronger than the ones Mu Chen had obtained by slaying the Spirit King. "Your spirit light baptism will be unique," the elder smiled and said. "In 3 days, go to the punishment hall. An elder will personally perform the baptism for you." Around them, the students cast envious glances, but they understood that this was what Mu Chen and the others deserved. Without them, no one would have qualified for the spirit light baptism. Mu Chen gazed at the crystal-clear spirit crystals before him, hesitated slightly, and cupped his hands. "Elders, I wonder if this special spirit light baptism can be transferred to others?" Upon hearing this, Luo Li's expression changed slightly, but she was stopped by Mu Chen's gaze. The 2 elders were taken aback. They exchanged a glance with Mu Chen and Luo Li, seemingly understanding something, and then smiled. "This special spirit light baptism isn't exclusive to just you 3. There's another condition. Any student holding a complete Spirit King-level spirit crystal is also eligible for this opportunity." Mu Chen's heart stirred. He immediately took out the half of the Spirit King crystal he had obtained, and Luo Li also took out her half. When the 2 halves came into contact, they fused perfectly together. Luo Li extended her jade hand to take the fused complete spirit crystal. The soft glow illuminated her exquisite face, making her beauty even more captivating. "Elders, is this okay now?" Mu Chen smiled. "Mu Chen, the more spirit crystals there are, the stronger the spirit light baptism will be, and the better the effect," one of the elders said, slightly surprised at how Mu Chen unhesitatingly gave half of his Spirit King crystal to Luo Li. Mu Chen didn't respond. While the spirit light baptism was important, it clearly paled in comparison to Luo Li in his eyes. Luo Li gently held Mu Chen's hand. Her clear eyes were filled with gentle waves, her expression warm. Seeing that Mu Chen was resolute, the 2 elders didn't say anything more. They released their gazes, and the powerful voice of one elder rang out in everyone's ears. "The final battle has ended. I now officially announce that this year's hunting war has come to a successful close." Mu Chen also spread his hands, allowing the light to envelop him. As he gazed at the vast expanse before him, he let out a deep sigh of relief.